Well, President Donald Trump also appears to be shifting his tone over Minneapolis, which has become a growing flashpoint for his immigration crackdown.
Yeah, the U.S. leader says he had a phone call with the city's mayor, Jacob Frey, citing lots of progress and a very good call with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Now, in a social media post, Mr. Trump says they seem to be on a similar wavelength. And he told the governor he will have the border chief, Tom Homan, call him.
Mr. Walz's office says the governor called for impartial investigations and that the president agreed to look into reducing the number of federal agents in Minnesota. And there are currently 3,000 of them in the city. The majority are from ICE, which leads the mass deportation operations.
U.S. media reports say Border Patrol Chief Gregory Bovino and some of his officers are expected to leave Minneapolis today. President Trump has announced he is deploying border security czar Tom Homan to Minnesota, who will report directly to him.
An outrage has escalated after Alex Pretty was killed by federal agents, the second such incident in a month involving a U.S. citizen. He was seen holding a phone before fatally being shot in a scuffle with agents. Homeland Security claims that he approached officers with a gun, which was reportedly holstered. And the White House says investigations are ongoing, laying the blame on Democrats.
This tragedy occurred as a result of a deliberate and hostile resistance by Democrat leaders in Minnesota. For weeks, Governor Walz and the Mayor Jacob Frey and other elected Democrats were spreading lies about federal law enforcement officers who are risking their lives daily to remove the worst criminal illegal aliens from our streets.
And bringing us more insight on this story is David Schultz, Distinguished University Professor of Political Science and Legal Studies at Hamline University. And he joins us live from St. Paul, Minnesota. Thanks for your time, Professor. So Donald Trump deploying his border czar, Tom Homan, to Minnesota. We know Homan served under the Obama administration. He is seen to be at odds with Kristi Noem. How are you reading this move? I mean, is this a change of tack for the Trump administration?
This is a good question here. If the whole purpose here is to deploy him here as a way of negotiating and finding an end game to end it, it's good. If he's sending him here to dig in policies, then it's not good. We just don't know yet. But given the fact that Bovino is leaving and the fact that there is just incredible amount of criticism at this point being directed even by Republicans increasingly against the tactics here, I think we're starting to see perhaps maybe the beginnings of a de-escalation strategy. What also will be curious to see is how this affects Noem's status at this point, because if Trump is looking for a way of deflecting criticism away from him, he's got the possibility of also maybe removing her, shifting the blame to her. So we're hopeful in Minnesota, but again, we've seen some hopeful signs in the past that have not really materialized.
Well, the governor, Tim Walz, has openly called for ICE to be removed from Minnesota, and some Republican leaders are starting to distance themselves. They're even staying silent. Professor, could this signal the inflection point for America, as Mr. Walz predicted? And how do you see this affecting Trump's control over immigration enforcement in the short term?
Yeah. Okay. In terms of the latter question, short term, we're starting to see this erosion of support. Again, as you point out, especially among Republicans. Later this week, we're going to have a vote in our Congress regarding funding, continued funding for ICE and Homeland Security. That's looking like that's not going to pass, which basically means the potential of trimming back of authority here. But certainly, the shooting this past weekend has really changed the trajectory of, I think, the Trump presidency and how he's viewed, because we know that his core base of his voters still appear to be with him. Trump has lost, according to the polls, those swing voters that helped him so much in 2024. And again, we're starting to see many Republicans starting to defect. For example, just today, Chris Medell, who was going to run as a Republican for governor in Minnesota, a very staunch supporter of Trump, basically exited the governor's race, saying that I can't run as governor because I so thoroughly disagree with the Trump administration policies. So this is important. We're seeing, I think, for the first time in this version of the Trump presidency, Republicans in Congress and many prominent Republicans starting to break with the president, and that's very significant in terms of, I think, his strength, because so far Trump has been strong because the Republicans have been united behind him.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on something you said about Noam, because could she be the scapegoat if Donald Trump is looking to kind of deflect some of the pressure, the blame from him? And if she is made the scapegoat, if she is removed, could this solve the issue, bridge the divisions within the Republican Party?
Well, first, I think you're absolutely correct that Noam has made several statements, anywhere ranging between misstatements, or just outright lies. In terms of this most recent shooting here, she's trying to convince the American public not to believe their eyes and their ears, and she's not helping Trump whatsoever. Remember, Donald Trump hosted an American television show for 15 years called The Apprentice, where his most famous line was, "You're fired." It would not be a surprise if Trump were to use her, as you said, as a sacrificial lamb, fires her, and brings somebody else in, and it gives them an opportunity to reset. Because I think the most important thing to be understanding about right here is, the optics don't look good in terms of what happened. And we have to think about the fact that in November this year, we have the U.S. midterm elections. And this is the kind of issue that's going to resonate. That is what's happening in Minneapolis, and the border control issues resonate with voters pretty significantly, and it's not boding well for the Republicans right now.
Professor, where you are, there's a deep history of civilian-led monitoring of authority dating back to the time of George Floyd about 5-6 years ago, and that is really shaping how residents interpret today's events. Can you talk to us about how deep this local legacy is, and what's it going to take to calm locals down?
Well, I think you're absolutely correct. After George Floyd was murdered nearly 6 years ago, what we started to, two things happened. One is that immediately afterwards, we had some rioting, and I think that has really scared people in terms of some of the rioting. But we had a lot of peaceful protests, and we had a lot of people starting to say, we need to monitor law enforcement. And now take us up to where we are now. We've got the same set of tensions here, is that people take very seriously in Minnesota the idea of law and order and rule of law. They take seriously the idea that people should be able to peacefully protest and peacefully monitor at this point. And I say all this because I think what we're really starting to see here again is how, and just especially in the last few days, but dating back a couple of weeks ago, when Renee Good was also killed, is that there is a sense of activism and a uniting here among at least those in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area that are standing really fast at this point, and the resistance is really stiffened pretty significantly.
Right. And finally, Professor, this is also happening as the odds of a U.S. government shutdown is growing. Senate Democrats are opposing a funding package that includes appropriations for the Department of Homeland Security, which, of course, oversees immigration enforcement. What leverage, realistically, do the Dems have at this stage?
Okay. They have some leverage in terms of the fact that they could potentially bring another partial government shutdown. Now, clearly, the one that happened last year, the Democrats didn't get very much out of it, and at some point, the support for it waned. But here, I think there's far more support for the Democrats to do something. Now, where their leverage comes in is perhaps, even if they say we're not going to fund, but they clearly have an ability to say that if we're going to get funding, or we're going to fund DHS, there has to be some strings attached to it in terms of rules and regulations. So I think they have far more leverage now than they did, clearly, let us say, with the last government shutdown and the issues over the subsidies for Affordable Care Act. And certainly in the last, let us say, 72 to 96 hours, the support for Democrats on their positions in terms of saying we have to limit ICE, I think has grown immensely. So Democrats have more leverage, but they have to be careful in terms of how they play it so they don't overplay their hand.
Professor David Schultz, it was a real pleasure talking with you. Thank you, Distinguished University Professor of Political Science and Legal Studies at Hamline University, joining us live from St. Paul in Minnesota.